Hi, class. Hope you're doing well. This is your video lecture on informative speeches. And while we're going to talk just a little bit about informative speeches, most of this lecture is going to continue our work on outlines. I'm going to show you what a full completed outline, a preparation outline that is, should look like, and how you can make it work for you. Basically, it's very easy as long as you understand the format, but also what you're trying to accomplish in going sentence by sentence. So, informative speeches, if you've already read the chapter, and you should have, you're probably thinking to yourself, this is very basic stuff. It seems very common sense. And they are, and it is. Uh, there are basically two major types of speech that happen in the world. Persuasive, probably the most used type of speech because we're always wanting people to do something. But number two is definitely informative speeches where people are just explaining something else to other people. Talking, here we are informing about something, a person, a place, a thing, a process. And it is what it says on the box. It's just informative. That's all it does. There are no other agendas or ulterior motives other than sharing information, which makes them, I think, kind of fun to do. But you'll have to be the judge of that as you do your informative speech. So hopefully you've read the chapter and you've got all the bases covered, but just a couple of things to remind you of. So let's share my screen and go over just a couple of things. Oh, needs to go to here. Come on, from current slide. Thank you. Always know your technology. Eesh. All right, so things to remember. Firstly, an informative speech does not persuade. And I know you're probably like, duh. It's a little harder than it seems, though, because a lot of times when we're talking about people, places, events, things, it's hard not to involve our own emotions and opinions about those people, places, thoughts, things, events. And basically, an informative speech basically is just presenting the information free of judgment. So let's say I'm doing a speech on the history of baseball, and I love baseball. I might be wanting to say things in it like, this will get you so excited about baseball, you'll want to just jump right in and play. And we're veering into persuasive territory there. Or there might be a person from history who you really just think is a terrible, terrible person. And who knows, you might have to do a speech on that person someday. And it might be very difficult for you not to say, this was a bad human being, or the things he did were wrong because. And that's, once again, going into persuasive territory. Persuasive speeches want you to think, believe, act a certain way. And like I said, informative speeches, we're just sharing the information. So you can still do a speech about a person you find reprehensible, but you have to stick to the information. Now, if people are listening and they form ideas in their own heads based on the facts you present, that happens. It's hard for people not to assign value judgments to things, even if they're just hearing data, statistics. The information you present will probably help people form their own values about that person or those events. So you just have to make sure that you're being factual with your information, and not going ahead and inserting your own opinion in there. Now, in every case, there's always an exception, and there are exceptions to this. However, this basically has to do with the main points and the supporting points, your subpoints and your sub points. Those all really need to stay informative, informative, informative. In your introduction and in your conclusion, though, sometimes we can sneak a sentence or two about our opinion. Why did I pick this topic? Because I have certain feelings about it, but you don't want to go too far into your opinion. You basically can say, I think this person or this event was bad because da 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 da, but I feel more people should know about it. And then you stick to the information throughout the body of the speech. Does that make sense? Okay. You might, if I'm doing a speech about the top 3 flavors of ice cream in the United States, in my body of my speech, I probably want to talk about vanilla ice cream, chocolate ice cream, and strawberry ice cream, because I think those are the top 3. Unless, gosh, Oreo has snuck up in there somehow. But I think let's just stick to vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. And let's pretend like I did the research and those are the big 3. In my introduction, I might say, my own personal favorite type of ice cream, peppermint, is not one of the top 3. I don't know how people couldn't pick it to be the top amongst the top 3, but there you go. The top 3 are, and then I give my central idea statement and whatever. You can give your opinion in your introduction, in your conclusion, as long as it's brief and it has something to do with, how you selected the topic, or just it kind of gives a little color to what you're going to say. But the main points and all of your subpoints and sub-subpoints, everything that reinforces or confirms your main points, that all has to be facts. That all has to be data. It has to be informative. Okay, second bit. Your specific purpose is going to limit what goes in and what stays out of the body of your speech. Those are your main points again, and your subpoints that come from your supporting materials. You want to make sure your speech stays in its lane. An informative speech, because we're talking about facts and details, sometimes can get bogged down if we take tangents. If something pops up and we're like, that's interesting too. And it's not exactly about our specific purpose, but I think people might be interested in it. And I could always use with a few extra seconds in the speech. So I want to put that in there. If I'm talking about the ice cream flavors again, and let's say the 4th most favorite flavor of ice cream is Rocky Road, and it's just right behind strawberry. I might be like, well, maybe I should throw some information about Rocky Road in there. Well, you know what? My specific purpose basically says we're going to talk about the top 3 most popular flavors of ice cream. We've gone out of the lane there, basically. It's about ice cream, sure. It's about flavor of ice cream, absolutely. Is it about the top 3? No. So that goes out. If we're talking about vanilla ice cream, which, okay, why, how, the reason for its popularity, its uses, whatever, okay, sure. But if we're talking about how we make vanilla, if we talk about how it comes from a vanilla bean or whatever, that really, okay, we do get vanilla from vanilla beans, and vanilla goes into vanilla ice cream and da da da. I think we're really kind of jumping off into a whole different section there. We're not really talking about why vanilla is a popular flavor of ice cream. We're not really talking about the things you can do with the vanilla ice cream. We're going off into vanilla specifically, and it's tangential, and so we need to stay in the lane once again. So you really need to make sure everything that goes into your speech is directly connected to your specific purpose and your specific topic. There you go. Third thing to remember, all of your supporting materials will need verbal citation, which is where you got this information. If you were writing a term paper, you would give text-based citations after each sentence. Wherever the information came from, you put parentheses up, whatever the author's last name was, page something, source, whatever. Because we don't give out paper versions of our speech whenever we're presenting a speech. We have to actually say the citations. And as most of the information, if not all of it, that's going to be part of your body of your speech is going to come from somewhere else. It's not going to come from inside your brain. You're not thinking this and going, I just happen to know because my brain works this way that vanilla is the most popular flavor of ice cream in America. No, you have to get that information from somewhere. Wherever you get that from, you need to say where you got it. Okay. If you don't, If you don't cite your information, basically it's like you're implying that that information came from you, and that's basically plagiarism. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute. I have watched speeches before on TV, like politicians say them, or, I go to a special event and someone gives a speech. People never really give a lot of verbal citations. What's that about? Because why are you making us do something? And honestly, I've never seen somebody really give a verbal citation. And I will have to say, you're probably correct. Every now and then you might hear someone say, as Abraham Lincoln once said, da 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 da. And that might be the only type of verbal citation you ever hear. However, the way it should be done is that if anything doesn't come from your own experiences or brain, you need to verbally cite it. So why don't people do it in professional life, in real life? A lot of reasons, and I think probably the most one that makes the most sense and happens most often is people are lazy. They don't want to do verbal citations, and it's not like the verbal citation police are going to come after you and be like, you didn't cite your sources. The other reason is because for the most part, I think people want us to think that all of that stuff really is just coming from this well of knowledge inside their brains. And if they start citing where they got all their information all the time, people will be like, well, they really didn't know very much. They were just saying what other people told them. And that's kind of the way things work. For our class, though, we're going to do things the right way because our university has a problem with plagiarism and taking credit for things that were not our own work. So we are going to verbally cite our sources. And I also know you're probably thinking, well, if it's almost everything we say in a speech, that's going to be a lot of verbal citations. And the answer is it is, but I'll show you a way where it's not as bad as you're going to think it might be. All right. So those are main things for you to think about as you start putting together your informative speeches. Let me stop sharing this and let me pull up an outline that I've developed that hopefully will help you build your own preparation outline for your informative speech. So, sharing screen once again. Full preparation outline. This is what your outline should look like when you turn it into me. If I at least see it looks like this one, I'm going to go, okay, this person really is on the ball. They made the format work. That's always a good thing. Start with a golden halo. And usually it means good things for the rest of your grading. So the main parts of your preparation outline are going to be, well, this is your contact information. Your YouTube link will go here, but you will not put it there to start with. Why? Because you have to record giving your speech, upload it to YouTube, then you'll put the link in. So you're going to make a space there to start with. We've got your specific purpose statement, your central idea statement. We've got your introduction, the body of the speech. We've got a transition statement that we could use. We've got a conclusion. And then we have our works cited section. And you might remember from last week's video that instead of having a whole separate page that's just works cited or references, we just kind of tack it on to the end of the outline. And everything needs to be cited appropriately based upon what we've learned by going to that Purdue webpage. Make sure you watch last week's video. It's full of info. All right, so a quick, well, maybe not so quick, a detailed review of how this works. So whenever I stick words together, it's basically a conceptual thing. That's where you'd put what that needs to be. So your first name and last name means, for example, with me, it'd be Penny Brooks. Class, this is the informative speech. This is where you put your link. Specific purpose and central idea statement, they're left justified, and you do want to bold specific purpose and central idea statement. Basically, they're what they say on the box. Specific purpose is going to be your specific purpose, which an informative speech starts off with to inform my audience about whatever your specific topic is. If we're still going with the ice cream thing, It would possibly be to inform my audience about the 3 most popular flavors of ice cream in the United States, vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. That's what it is. The central idea statement might be specific topic is interesting. Now, this is a very vague way to put it, but statement 1, it has to be a statement, a full sentence, subjects, verbs, whatever's necessary, punctuation. You always want to try to fit your main points, or at least a reference to what are going to be your main points coming up in your central idea statement. You don't have to. Really, all a central idea statement has to be is if someone were to ask you what your speech was going to be about, it would be an effective summary in 1 sentence. But an effective way to do that is to basically present little summary of what are going to be your main points. So if I were using my ice cream thing, I might say basically that the top 3 most popular types of ice cream are in the United States are vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. See, this is why you have to work it ahead of time. Me just going off the top of my head is not working. I have to know, I've researched and I've decided what I'm going to say about each one of these flavors is, how popular are they? Why are they popular? And some things you can do with them, apart from just eating them. And so my central idea statement could then be, the most popular ice cream flavors in the United States are vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. For reasons that I will explain. And well, no. See, this is harder than it looks. Maybe it's, and it can be something you would say in your speech. So you could feasibly say, and this might be the easy way to do this one. I'm going to share with you today what the 3 most popular ice cream flavors are, as well as the reasons why they're popular and things you can do with them apart from just eating them straight. That might be your central idea statement, and you might want to play with it a little bit like I'm doing right now, but eventually you'll find one that has good grammar and says what you're going to do. Now, when you organize things, you have to decide, okay, do I want to talk about all 3? Like, this is why all 3 of these are popular. This is why things you can do with all 3 of them, which gives you 2 main points. I think I'm going to go by variety of ice cream. So I'm going to say, like, the first one is vanilla. I'm going to explain, why vanilla is so popular. And then I'm going to have information about what you can do with it. So I'm going to have 1 main point about vanilla, 1 main point about chocolate, 1 main point about strawberry. Okay, let's go with that. Remember, we can always change this up as we're working on the outline. So this is why doing it in advance is so good, because you can work out your issues and not at the last minute go, oh, this is not working. Give yourself time. All right, so you remember from last week's video, we start with the body first, right? Because that's where the information is. In the outline, we always start with we put it in the order that we're going to give the speech. Remember, your outline is basically your exact speech that you plan to say line by line. Instead of writing it in a big paragraph after paragraph after paragraph paper, we're just basically setting all the sentences one after the other in an outline form, so that when we review and have to edit, you don't have to read through the whole paragraph to try to find, okay, where's that sentence I'm looking for? I need to take that out. This makes everything really accessible to you. And great thing to do is to basically anything you need to write, put in an outline form, take things, you can move them around so much more easily. But that's a whole other, that's a persuasive speech for you. All right. There are differences between the introduction section, the body section, and the conclusion section that are not going to make a lick of sense. I honestly am not sure why they do them like this, but they do. You might notice, for example, in your introduction section, we start with All these sentences are basically considered main points, which is why they're all given Roman numerals. And they go 1 through 5 because that's how many sentences I have in my introduction. That's good, right? Makes sense? And in an introduction, which we're going to talk about introductions and conclusions in next week's video lecture, but there's various goals we want to do with an introduction. We want to get attention. We want to explain to people what we're going to be talking about. We want to relate our central idea statement. There's a whole bunch of things we're going to want to do. Every sentence, remember, should be a full and complete sentence, but only one. So if you start writing 2 or 3 sentences under your main point 2 in your introduction, nope, every sentence is its own main point in the introduction. So this first sentence should be used to get immediate attention, because that's what you want to do right off the bat, is get people listening to you. The second sentence should follow up on that attention getting, but also go further into explaining your specific topic. You should have as many main points in your introduction as you need to accomplish your introduction goals. There are 4. We'll talk about them in detail coming up. Usually your final main point in your introduction is your central idea statement. See, all of these are sentences. Now, this, I don't mean for you to take out, okay, the word specific topic, we're just going to stick my specific topic is, and these exact words are what we're going to use. No, you're going to have to actually write an introduction, but hopefully these sentences are telling you how to write your introduction. Does that make sense? Good. And the last sentence, remember, your final main point is your central idea statement. And you might notice that then number 5 is exactly our central idea statement, which is this vague one. Specific topic is interesting because of interesting reason 1, interesting reason 2, and interesting reason 3. If you heard that, how many main points do you think you'd be hearing in our speech? 3? Yep. That's exactly it. And it doesn't even have to be, your main points don't have to be like reasons why something is interesting. If you're doing a how-to speech, they'd be all like the steps in a process for how to do something. If you're talking about time in history, you could go in chronological order. First, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And all of those things would be main points, you know, early on in the event, during the thick of the event, the aftermath of the event. You know, those are all going to be basically benchmarks for your main points. So it could be, you know, this is just interesting reasons why specific topic is interesting, but for whatever you're trying to explain to us, you're going to have to find at least 3 things. 3 or 4 is usually a good number. The longer a speech you get, the more main points you need to talk about. But for our purposes, 3 to 4 are basically good. So in our case, you know, I have 3 main points because we're talking about vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry ice cream. And each one of those sections is going to have, you know, how popular are they? It's going to be, you know, why is it so popular? And the third bit is, in each one of these main points is going to be, you know, things you can do with it apart from just eating it out of a bowl. So let's go down to our body. This is where the actual meat and potatoes of our speech is going to be. And if you recall, we're looking for 3 main points. Main points are always designated by Roman numerals. So we have Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, and Roman numeral 3. So automatically we have, you can just go ahead and write your main points for 1, 2, and 3, because the first part of the body of your speech concerns whatever main point 1 is. In this case, it's interesting reason number 1. For our ice cream example, the most popular flavor of ice cream in America is vanilla. Bang, sentence. Your subpoints here designated as A, B, and C basically reinforce, support, defend your main point. And that's the other parts of the supporting materials that we've been talking about. This is where the information about, you know, how popular is it? So what are the stats that we know? Why is it so popular? You know, we have to get into some other people's opinions as to why it's so popular. And then things you can do with it apart from eating it, you know, or apart from eating it by itself. So if we're talking about vanilla, probably one of these subpoints is going to be about, you know, here's the data. And then second main subpoint would be, it's so popular because what reason? And then this last subpoint would be because it is so usable, people do all sorts of things with it. They make sundaes, make cake, they make ice cream cake with vanilla ice cream, yum. Vanilla pie, ice cream pie, yum. So just make sure all of your stuff is backed up by research. Now, hey, look, here is a verbal citation that tells us subpoint A came from what creator one, source one. What am I talking about there? Well, if you go down to my works cited, you see we need at least 4 sources, at least. Doesn't mean only 4, as many as you need, but at least 4. And here we've got examples of citations that would appear in a works cited page. So this is a publication, creator one, last name, first name, period. This is their book title or magazine title, city of publication, comma, publisher, comma, publication date, period. That's how that work is cited. And the information that we're going to use, if it comes from that source, this is how, one of the ways we could say a verbal citation for this information. So for example, we have a book by Bob Smith called Ice Cream is Amazing. And he basically explains that vanilla is the favorite ice cream for 65% of all Americans. Okay, that stat came from Bob Smith. I didn't get that out of my head. I got that from Bob Smith, right? So I need to say where I got that. So according to Bob Smith, in their article or work, Ice Cream is Amazing, vanilla is the ice cream of choice for 65% of Americans. That supports this whole idea that vanilla is the most popular kind of ice cream amongst Americans. This subpoint also comes from source one and helps reinforce or defend it. I can also say, Bob Smith says that, or Smith continues, Smith also says vanilla is the most popular because it has a flavor profile that's easily mixable to create all new flavor sensations. That's why it's so popular, is because it's got this profile that goes well with almost everything else, because vanilla really does. So I don't necessarily have to give a citation in that sentence because it's right next to this one. If you have subpoints or sub-subpoints in a row that all come from the same batch of information, you can use the first citation to kind of trickle down. It's only when you get to information that does not come from that source, you need to bring up that citation. So people know, okay, this isn't Bob Smith anymore. This is, Judy Johnson who said this part. So because that information also came from source one, I don't necessarily have to put a verbal citation in it, but it might be clear, or it might, flow better if I say, Smith also says that the reason it's so popular is because of its flavor profile. And look, I even put some sub-points that, okay, since B says, remember we said that because of the flavor profile, that's what makes it so popular. If I have information that also supports the idea of the flavor profile, I can say, the vanilla flavor is mellow, and basically it can form a foundation. It tastes good by itself, but it also, something that has to do with it being mixed or added to other things that then increase their likability. If it has to do with B, then I can add these sub points underneath it. And look, it comes from the same source, so I don't need to necessarily verbally cite it again. However, my C came from a totally different source, so I do need to throw in a verbal citation there. And this would be where I got the information about vanilla being a perfect base for everything from sundaes to cakes to pies. So if I got that information from a different source, which would be source two, creator two, if I go down to my works cited, The second one, creator two, last name, first name. And look, it's a web article. So if I got this web article called Vanilla Ice Cream is the Best on everythingicecream.com, date of publication, here's the web address, and I accessed it on whatever date I looked at it. So if this is Judy Johnson and she wrote this article on icecreamdaily.com and her article was called Vanilla Ice Cream is the Best, then I could come up here and the way I'd write this one would be in Vanilla Ice Cream is the Best by Judy Johnson, she says, or in Vanilla Ice Cream is the Best, a web article, Judy Johnson says that ice cream is the perfect foundation for sundaes, ice cream cakes, and ice cream pies, because that's where the information came from. That supports my main point. They all flow together. If I want to add more sub points to either the C or the A, I can. If you're doing a super long speech, you will get into sub points where your sub points also have reinforcing materials. You can go as far into the outline as you like. We just need to fill 4 to 6 minutes. So make sure you have enough to do that. You probably will not need to do sub points. Okay, transitions go anywhere you have one point and then another main point, and maybe they don't flow perfectly well together, but you want to transfer from one thing to the other. So you don't necessarily need transitions between all of your main points, but there's nothing wrong with having one. We could always put a sentence in there. Well, we've talked about the most popular flavor, vanilla, and now we're moving on to the second most popular. And as it's second most popular, many people think it is their most favorite. We're talking about chocolate. And then you go into your main point too. You know, it just basically takes people from one idea to another. You don't necessarily need one unless just the change in topics is particularly jarring, but they can be kind of fun to have, you know. Let's see, when you're writing a transition, make sure it's in parentheses, you say it's a transition, and it needs to also be a full sentence. So main point 2 is created much like main point 1 is. Once again, we go to 2 and we start with the A, start from A and B. In every main point, you always start with your subpoints being A and B. You don't go like the, okay, now this is F and G and H. No, every main point, we start from the beginning again. So we have A and B. Under B, we have 2 sub points, and it's the same thing. Since this information came from creator 3 and source 3, we need to verbally cite it. And there's a lot of ways you can do it. I said that according to such and such in their article, such and such, but you might also say, you know, creator 3 says in this article, you know, this information, or you might put the information out, and that's according to creator 3 in their book, source 3 or whatever. However, you're putting it in there, it still needs to be there, but you don't have to always start with a citation. You could start with a fact and then put the citation in. As long as it's connected and we can see who said what, it's all good. But look, in B, we can see that we have a totally different piece of source material, that A did not come from the same place that B came from. So we still need to put the verbal citation in. Otherwise, people might think B came from the source listed in A. That didn't. We need to be correct about who we're attributing to. And look, 1 and 2, this information came from source 4.2, so we don't necessarily have to write an attribution in there. It all flows through until we get to a totally new piece of information from a source that's not directly next to them. And we go to the strawberry section. The third most favorite flavor of ice cream in the United States, or most popular, is strawberry. And once again, if we have information back from our source number 1, you know, we haven't talked about source number 1 since main point 1, we probably need to mention them again. So we probably don't have to give the whole citation. You know, we could just say, you know, he was Bob Smith. We can just say, hearing from Smith again, he says, you know, strawberry has always been a strong contender, although a number of flavors are coming up on it. You know, who knows how long it'll be number 3 for long. Once again, if you have sub points that go with A and sub points that go with B, you would insert them there. Make sure that if you switch up sources, if you go to a different source, we have to, oh, look, we have in source 4 for B, that's the one we use there. But our first sub point that also supports this B sub point, that comes from our source 3. So we have to make sure we mention that this sentence comes from somebody totally different than the previous sentence. It can get a little, you might feel like all I'm doing is verbally giving citations, which is probably why a lot of people just don't do them in real life. But we are doing them because it's the right way to do it and it's proper, and I will be watching out for that. Okay, so you're going to make sure you cover enough of this information to where it's interesting, people are learning something, you're filling up the time, and then we get to the conclusion. Once again, we're going to talk more about conclusions in our next week's lecture video. But we basically format the conclusion like we did the introduction, where we start over again with main point 1. And then it's just main point, main point, main point, main point. We don't have sub points or sub points in our introduction or conclusion. So we start over with 1. First sentence should be used to signal that you've reached the conclusion of your speech. We're going to talk about all the goals of conclusions next week. The second sentence should start achieving the goals of your conclusion. You should have as many main points as you need to accomplish these goals. And then you always want to send people out with something to remember, basically, with your last sentence. Your final sentence should be a statement that sends your audience off with something you hope they'll remember. The end. And people will go, woo, yes, fantastic ice cream speech. That was just, I learned so much. At least maybe they will learn about ice cream if they're not whistling and shouting. The end. And if you were to read all of these sentences in a row, and they are between 4 and 6 minutes, that is your speech. Now, that's when the practicing comes up, because technically you are not to read your speech. You are to work on it until you know all the details of the speech, including all those citations well enough. They just come right out of your head. You might need a speaking outline that just prompts you, point, point, point. So you're not reading, but if you get stuck, you can look down. Oh, that's where I am. Let's keep going. That's all you should need. So how much practice does that take? A lot of practice. You can do it. Then we've already talked about your works cited. You need at least 4 sources, and they all need to be listed properly. Ta-da! And that's it. So then you'll give your speech, it'll be recorded, you'll upload it, you'll put in your YouTube link, and that's what you will turn into me for both your informative speech and your persuasive speech. Fun fact, when it comes to your informative speech and your persuasive speech, half of the points that you can earn will be based on your preparation speech alone. I'm sorry, your preparation outline alone. I was trying to make a really cool point there and word came out. So let me start that again. Watch this, okay? Important point. Half the points for both your informative speech and your persuasive speech will be based on how well you do your preparation outline alone. The other half of the points comes from your delivery of your speech. So you can give a speech with amazing delivery. You can make it seem I'm just rattling off facts, figures, everything coming out of my head, and you'll think I know what I'm talking about. If your outline is terrible, I'm going to know that information did not come from any preparation you did. Things are just flying out of your brain, and we're going to have to talk. Vice versa. Some people are really good at doing the research and building the speech, writing it. It's mwah. But then when it comes to give the speech, they get kind of hung up on the delivery. So we are going to learn how to do both well. We're going to learn how to write a fantastic outline that basically is your speech line by line. But we're also going to make sure that your delivery gets really good. So when you're out there rattling off your facts and figures and giving your reasons for things, giving your information for things, people are going to go, wow, that was great. And I'm going to look at your outline and go, that's exactly what they had in their outline. Mwah! A plus, 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 stars of pluses. That's exactly what I expect to do. Okay. All right. So let's stop sharing this outline. So we've talked a bit about our informative speeches. We've looked at a full example of a preparation outline. I know you've got a lot of work to do, but you can do it. Don't forget, you can email me anytime. I am here to help you. So if there's any part of the outline you don't get, if you're having trouble just making it come out right on Word, because I know that's fun to do too. If you're trying to narrow down a topic and you're like, is this narrow enough? Email me. We'll work it out. We'll work it out together. All right. I'll see you next week.